We will go to questions now.
Hey, Bruce, just a comment on the gerbera. One
Yeah.
interesting thing about gerberas is they will lose water from their stems. So you've probably seen people using straws and things like that. So that's the primary area that gerberas lose water because they don't have any leaves, at least the cut ones don't. They will lose it from the stems.
Okay. All right. Well, Kelly, do we have some questions and then we can get ready for tomorrow?
Yes, we sure do. We do have a couple questions. We have many people that are asking if this presentation will be available. Yes, on Friday, we will have it available, both today's session and tomorrow's session. So this will be recorded and we will have links that you can access so that if you'd like to review or if you'd like to, watch it at a later time. So we will post that as far as where you can find that on our website. So I did want to let you know that that will definitely be something that we'll have on the website. I do have a question. Here is one from Madeline. Are there treatments we can do in our retail space for ethylene other than storing with fruit? Are there treatments we can do in our retail space for ethylene other than not storing with fruit?
Yeah, so as far as ethylene goes, really the treatments for ethylene would be done by the grower, maybe by the wholesaler, but mostly at the grower level. So the flowers would be harvested. I'm not going to go into the specific types of treatments, but the ethylene action inhibitors would be applied at the farm, and then they could protect the flowers all the way through the chain. At the wholesale level, for example, when the flowers arrive in Miami, they could be treated with ethyl lock, which is a gas treatment that can be applied to the truck when the flowers are being delivered, or there are sachets that can be placed in the flower box to treat the flowers once the box is closed. So sometimes you might receive a box of flowers and see this little sachet inside, and it might be an ethyl block sachet. But it's nothing you would be concerned with treating at your florist shop. And I want to be clear, you never want to store flowers with fruits because the fruits are giving off ethylene, and that is what's going to damage the flower. So it's really important just to store them separately. And other ways you can lower ethylene levels is to just make sure you have good air circulation. Remove diseased and damaged flowers. Flowers with botrytis, the botrytis can actually produce ethylene as well. And be aware of any malfunctioning heaters that you might have. Sometimes space heaters and different things can cause high ethylene levels if they're not working correctly. Car exhaust is another thing. So when we do audits, we always check shipping bays. So if you're a large florist operation and you have a garage you're pulling into with your trucks, make sure it's well ventilated and that those delivery trucks are turned off while you're loading, because you could expose flowers to ethylene at that stage. But really, when you're sourcing flowers is when you want to make sure that your suppliers are taking care of ethylene sensitive flowers.
Great, thank you. We did have a question from Amanda. How long can you keep the cleaning solution before you need to mix new cleaning solution?
Well, Gary, you want that one or me? I mean, it's kind of subjective to how much you're exposing it to. I think the DCD will change color a little bit to kind of give you an indicator that it's probably time to swap it out. I will say tomorrow we'll get into the cost on all this stuff.
Okay.
And what you're going to find is hanging on to things too long may not be the best way to go. It's the actual percentage of cost that you're spending to get the results, and just every one of these chemicals is very insignificant. So if you're doing a full cleaning of your buckets and they've been clean for a couple weeks in DCD, you're probably going to find that you're going to get more time to use the DCD than when you first start.
Okay, great. Also, we have a question from Jolene. Is there an optimal cold water temperature to use when processing your flowers? Example, too hotter than or no colder than?
So I would just use the temperature range that we went over in this talk. So, 37 degrees, 38 degrees is probably the highest we want in our cooler. So anywhere from 34 to 38, which is what are the recommended cooler temperatures, that's what you want the water to be. So if you're able to, I would just store buckets of solution in the cooler, let them cool down. And then when your flowers come in, process them right into these cold buckets of water. The cooler, the better. And obviously, when we're talking cooler temperatures, we don't want to get below freezing. And, of course, you're not going to be able to do that with water anyway. So, so just use your cooler temperature as a guide and chill your water to that temperature.
I would say from a reality standpoint too, if you may end up just having to use cold water from the tap if you can't get stuff cooled down, if you don't have the room or the time or whatever. But understand you are making a sacrifice on flower life to do that. But I do get that it could be tough to always do that. If you've got room, Gary's advice is correct.
Right. Okay, great. Yeah, we have so many questions. So thank you everybody for sending those in. Other than trial and error, how can we identify cultivars with the longest face life?
Yeah, you might look in florist magazines, see if anyone is doing any testing. Sometimes universities will do screenings of different cultivars, although unfortunately there aren't a lot of floriculture programs left at large universities. Really the best thing to do is to test it on your own, or you might ask the growers if they know, because they have vase testing rooms and they're always testing new varieties, and maybe they can share some information with you. But it's not difficult to get in a few different varieties. Just throw them in some vases of flower food and observe them and see how they do. Or search online and see what information you can find. It's sometimes difficult because varieties are always changing.
Right.
But there are some that are still tried and true varieties that have been around for a while. But that's what I would recommend.
Okay, great. Again, we have so many questions. I'll go with Jean, who asked, I always have trouble with stocks and dahlias. Any more tips for them?
Yeah, stocks and dahlias. Dahlias are field flowers that are considered dirty flowers. They have a lot of bacteria on them. The quick tip is something that I would try with both of those. I know when stock are harvested that there's usually a lot of root material that's still on there, and they have hydration issues. So definitely you want to use a hydration solution in a flower food, get that pH down to where it needs to be. With stock, you do need to be wary of ethylene problems, and what you'll see there is the flowers will actually just curl up on the stem prematurely. They don't drop off, but they just kind of enroll on themselves, and that could be a sign of ethylene damage. And if you're seeing that consistently, I would ask your supplier if they know if they're being treated with an ethylene action inhibitor.
Great. Again, we still have many questions, so we're going to go over just a little bit here. We have a question from Jenny. She loves the bucket dipping tip, using the tub cut in half with solution to roll the dirty buckets in. She does have a quick question. She assumes you replace and refresh the solution often. Any guess on the number of buckets you can clean with the system? Dump the old solution each day after washing buckets? So maybe,
Yeah, that goes back to the earlier question, and it is very subjective. I mean,
uh-huh.
and I don't know if you can speak to that, Gary, but I just, my feeling is that as you use it and you adopt a system, you will get more longevity out of the solution. And I would say if you're doing it for the first time, I would probably get rid of that solution after the first use and then kind of monitor it. I don't really have a good answer for that. And I would lean on Gary maybe for more of an answer.
Yeah, I think of it like when you're mopping the floor. We mop our flower test room when the water starts getting cloudy and it's time to change out the solution. We just do it on a visual level. If it looks dirty and there's a lot of things floating in there, switch it out. And I would do the same thing with the DCD. As long as it still has some clarity to it and there's not a lot of particulates and things floating in there, go ahead and use it. Once it starts looking too dirty, switch it out. And that is subjective. You know, what is dirty.
Right. Again, we could go for another hour, I feel like. We have another question. Is there a list of which flowers hydration is most aided by leaves and how much foliage to leave? I don't know if I've seen one before, but.
No, not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
But I wouldn't get too hung up on that. You know, just understand that you do need leaves to help facilitate water uptake. I think with something like a hydrangea, I think you could leave too many leaves and have it losing more water through transpiration. And you also have to consider aesthetics too. You know, when you're making an arrangement, you're going to do whatever you need to do to make it look good. But I have seen studies on roses where they've done something similar to what we showed with hydrangea, and they remove all the leaves. They still will take up some water, but it's very limited. So it is a balance. Sometimes you could have too much or too little. But the reason we showed you all that is just so you're aware that the leaves do function, sometimes positively, sometimes negatively in terms of water uptake. And sometimes you just have to experiment for yourself.
Okay, I feel like we can go ahead and probably end now. And what we can do is, if you do have a question out there, we will get back to you with an answer to your question. And we can address some of these questions tomorrow during our course, which continues again tomorrow at 1 o'clock. So if you'd like to join us tomorrow, we can address a lot of these questions tomorrow, or we can answer your question privately. Again, for tomorrow, if you're not registered, you just need to go to oasisfloralproducts.com/pages/webinar. And then if you haven't signed up, there's a spot there that you can sign up for tomorrow's class. And don't forget, again, too, on Friday, both seminars or both classes will be available for you to view. And this is where you will take your quiz and where you will get your certificate, and we will email that to you once that's completed. But we really appreciate everybody's time. We could be here for, I feel like for another hour, I think, but
and
again,
I think we will, we will get everybody's questions answered.
yes, we will definitely do that. And we appreciate everybody's time today. We look forward to talking with you tomorrow for tomorrow's class. And again, thank you. Thanks so much for joining us for our first Oasis University. And we're super excited that you were here with us today. So thank you again.